Hello, and welcome to the first episode of this series.
We are focusing on... In this series, we're going to focus on character and how you can be a better player and a better DM.
I mean, there's a lot of things out there. You'll find many videos talking about the same subject, but we're going to put our kind of spin on things.
Yep.
There's a lot of things that people will say that we agree with, and a lot of things that people say that we absolutely don't agree with. And in this series, you're going to find a lot of things that might help you out. So thank you for watching this, and hopefully you get something out of it.
We're talking about playing or preparing your player character for episode 0.
Yes, and not overdoing it, because it's a very common practice of players, and I know I'm super guilty of this, of writing a novel. 28 pages. DM, I've sent you a novel. I want you to check section 23B of page 4002. And you roll a number, one character dies in the first combat.
It depends on what school of thought you're going to follow. So, do you have an idea of what class you want to play? Do you have because you should probably roll to fit that class, and then you might have 2 really bad rolls, and you need to figure out how that's going to suit your character.
Or point buy, which we've talked about a little bit before.
Yeah.
Whatever system you're doing to create the characters to get the stats, either way there's going to be some dump stats, and there's going to be some higher stats. Now, you're not going to want to just put them arbitrarily into something. You want to obviously have a class, like you said before, but you also don't want to just show up with a highly intelligent person that has a 8 intelligence. You know what I mean? You got to write your character after you've decided where you're putting your stats. And how did they get to that point? Because you're not always smart about everything you do.
Right. And you're probably not going to roll a monk and make intelligence their top ability.
Probably not.
Unless you are. I mean, if that's the way you want to play your game, that's fine.
Hence rolling before you decide. That way you can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be a smart monk.
I'm going to be an accountant monk.
Good with numbers.
I'm going to do taxes.
Crunching numbers.
So, like an example of how your ability scores can fit how you actually play your character. Right now, I'm playing a monk who has
I was just thinking that.
extremely low charisma. It's a 6, and during the campaign, he suffered injuries, which lowered his charisma even further. So not only is his ability score 6, which normally is a -2 modifier, it's actually -4 because of his massive hideous scar that he got from Nosferatu, yeah. So I have to roleplay that, and generally that results in him not speaking as much. But when he does, he's pretty short spoken. He doesn't really say a lot, and he pretty much fails any conversation he's in.
But the cool thing is that he tries, and I think that's important for you to do as a character, especially in session 0. Establish that even though you're a low charisma character, and there's a lot of low charisma people out there in the world that love to talk, and create a character that's playable, that's likable in certain aspects. You don't want to be annoying. You don't want to be the guy that just talks all the time and ruins everything. You don't want to be the guy in the combat that like, hey, we're going to go talk to this very sensitive warlord. And then someone goes up and just like punches him in the throat because it's what my character would do.
Yeah.
You got to be knowing what everyone's doing, but you want to play a character that you would enjoy, but also that other people would enjoy too, because you're not alone, and there's no reason you should act like you're the only person that's going to affect them.
Yeah. And it's okay to make choices that, like, that's what my character would do, but...
Absolutely. That's the game.
When you're screwing the whole group over and, like, out of game, I don't know. It's... I don't know quite how to put it. It's okay to screw over people in the group if it's fun.
Just put a little ding.
But if nobody's having fun and it doesn't result into something fun by the end of everything, then why are you doing it?
It's a game. It's a game, but just like you don't want to Leroy Jenkins every fight. By the way, if you know what happened in that battle, I don't think it ended well. And so that's kind of the point, is what we're trying to make here, is that when you create a character, absolutely play your character. Do what your character would do, because that's what makes role-playing role-playing. And session 0 is exactly that. You're not knowing exactly what you're doing. You may have a different accent by session 3 than you had at session 0. You don't know. But you got to just play around with your character and with everyone else. That's the very important part. With everyone, not just by yourself.
Yeah, so, you know, episode 0, like, what kind of stuff do you do? Like, when you're a player, and I know you're not a player as much as you're a DM usually, but what kind of stuff do you do that sort of, like, linguistically, what kind of stuff do you do to sort of establish yourself in a group?
So I like to, when I'm a player, do some kind of accent. You don't have to do this, but for me, I like to have my voice and then my character's voice. So it's obvious when my person is speaking versus me. And number 2 is I like to establish that I'm a team player, and I try to find something in the group that, like, another player would be saying, like, oh, I gotta get back into town, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, this is very inconvenient for me. And I'll be like, yeah, me too, what were you doing? And then I'll try to, like, attach myself to a reason why my character, who has probably been traveling on his own for various reasons, to jump into the situation and feel like I'm going to follow this group of people, potentially idiots, into a situation that my character wasn't planning on in the first place. I'm going to go slay a dragon with 4 other guys.
Yeah.
Or I want to survive. And you kind of think, what would my character do to incorporate himself into this group?
It seems like quite often, you know, players don't really try to create the reason for them to be with the group. And maybe it's different in your own games, but characters should absolutely try to somehow be a part of that story where they're creating the reason that they are with the group. And I know for some people it's you know, I'm afraid of being alone. I finally found people who I have common goals with.
Lots of stabbing.
Yeah, but if you're a homicidal maniac and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I think I like these people. I don't know, like, you need to have a good reason. You know, maybe you've got some kind of blood pact with one of them, or I don't know.
I feel like, exactly, and I feel like within, like, a session 0, you've got to establish and pay attention. I think that's a very common thing, is you're so worried about what your character is going to do to try to fit in and try to test out the waters. Yeah. I think a very overlooked thing is paying attention to what everyone else is doing. It's a highly, sought after skill to be able to read the room and actually use their characters to create your character. I think oftentimes maybe don't have much of a backstory.
So one of the things that I really like to do linguistically with characters is using metaphors with their speech. Everybody uses metaphors, and generally we don't think about it too much. But these characters would use metaphors specific to their knowledge. So if you're a sword-wielding character, you know, maybe a lot of your metaphors have to do with sword fighting. Or, you know, if you're a wizard, your metaphors might have something to do with, like, I don't know, brewing potions and throwing wands. I don't know, just like make your metaphors based on what your character would know.
Bubbling gas back.
And write them down. Keep a list. Because exactly.
Do. And I we've talked about this before, and his wife plays a really cool character where she'll use different phrases that have to do with her upbringing. And I think it's so, if you're going to role play, and if you're not the table that does role play and you're just kind of like, we just roll dice together and have fun, doesn't matter.
It's fine.
But if you really get into character and people are trying to, you don't have to be really good at it. You're not voice actors. I'm specifically mentioning certain groups on the internet that are great, but we're not all them.
Yeah.
But if you want to have a more realistic character, maybe if you're a dwarf or something and you lived your entire life underground, you're not going to use some like airy quote from like an elven thing. You're going to use very like, you know, it's like, oh, you know what, this guy's as hot as iron. You know, like, you know, like, and it's like, oh, what does that mean? Oh, he's like, he's ready to learn. You know, like, oh, well, I didn't know that, so how would you know that?
Yeah.
And it creates a character like question, like people start interacting. It makes it feel like a real game.
It adds a lot of color to your character, and I think most of us who play D&D were creatives in some aspect. I think most of us want to have a satisfying character, a believable character, and those metaphors add so much color and reality to your character, even when you don't have other things fleshed out.
Yeah, it's just like a song in a movie. I mean, it's just like, yeah, the movie itself is probably great, but the song makes it feel more flavorful. And so when you're putting something in there like almost like a poem, or we're doing a feudal Japanese type setting fantasy, and one of the characters will occasionally write a haiku, and it feels so immersive when someone takes something from a culture and actually does it at the table, and then it creates this idea where it's almost like you can feel yourself being there for just a split second. And I know that might sound corny, but we're in the game to lose ourselves. That's why we play games, to entertain and have fun together.
Yeah.
So why not make it better?
What was the somebody was talking about escapism's kind of a dirty word, and well, at least it has connotations of being one.
Sure.
Right? But this
live in the now.
This person was, I can't remember who said it. What's wrong with escapism? Nothing's wrong with it. I mean, it's we all need it.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say sometimes the world isn't exactly what you want it to be, but the world you create together at the table can be so much better if you use these type of tips and hints. Because honestly, when I first started playing, and if you're at that level and you're like, how do I get going, and how do you probably found this video, don't stress it. Really don't. If you have a group of people that know the game, don't worry about it. If you're at a new table with new DM and new everything, I've done that. I've been there. You figure it out together. So don't stress your character too much. Don't go with a huge backstory. Just kind of have fun. Yeah. Like, really, like he said, having a few little ideas, and that's it. Just a few little phrases that your character would say, nervous tics that they'll have, flaws. And I think a lot of people just overlook flaws because they want to be perfect. You want to be strong and capable. But people are not, especially level 1s. You have many blaring weaknesses. Level 20s do too.
We rolled so in our podcast, we rolled random traits for our villain recently, and in the world that we're currently building. And his flaw was, I would rather eat my armor than admit I'm wrong. And every situation that he's ever in, if somebody's playing him, that flaw needs to be front and center of what they're remembering, how he's going to act in that situation. Because if somebody calls him out as being wrong, he's not going to admit it. He's going to prove all the ways that he's right.
And what kind of altercations will that create? I mean, you think about somebody that says they're always right. How annoying is that person? You can also play that person to a flaw to yourself and hurting the group. People will get super bugged by it. So tell your people your flaw. I'm serious. Like, tell the table, say, these are my attributes, flaws. Will come up this one. It's a little bit tough. So sometimes my character is going to be a little annoying, but just so you know, not me. Yeah. Let people know that sort of thing.
Being a drunk in a holy district where maybe they are having some kind of ban on alcohol, prohibition. Just like, some characters, their weaknesses are going to be just like so much fun to roleplay.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get super in depth, if it depends on the type of game you're playing, you got to know what your characters are going to be doing in that kind of setting. So ask your DM what kind of, if this is your first time especially, ask them what kind of game are you creating? Is it going to be more horror suspense? Is it going to be very high fantasy, low fantasy? Is it going to be noir? I mean, it doesn't matter. Ask, because you don't want to be the odd man out.
Right.
Unless that's what you want, but...
If it's noir and you're playing barbarian, you might be wrecking the game for everybody.
Let's see.
Maybe.
There seems to be some kind of blood on the floor there. Gross.
The blood makes me angry. I kill everybody in the scene.
Charge through the door. That's not the solution.
One of the ways that you can make your character really interesting is by adding a lot of irony to their character, their backstory, their goals. Everything that they do should have levels of irony, which will make them interesting. I mean, that's the easiest way in my opinion, to make a character interesting, is just add irony.
Yeah, and maybe things that are adaptable over time. Like, for instance, I had mentioned to him before, maybe a fighter that has a problem with blood. And I know that sounds that sounds super annoying. It's a combat-heavy game, but having something that you kind of have to overcome. For instance, in Critical Role Season 2, Caleb, very popular character, he's afraid of fire because his family died in a fire. And so he is a wizard and casts fireball, firebolt, things with fire. So sometimes he'll have to roll like kind of a percentage die to see if it affects him, and he might be stunned for a round. And he created this flaw for himself.
A fire wizard afraid of fire. A goblin who wants nothing more than to be taller than a barbarian.
Starts walking on stilts. Disadvantage on all of his dexterity and acrobatic rolls.
A halfling fighter.
Hammer to the toes. Yeah.
I mean, what other ways do you think you could add irony to a character? I mean, there's physical traits, there's fears.
The buff wizard.
The buff wizard.
Because typically they're the scrawny guy, but maybe he's an athletic enthusiast and wants to be healthy, so he exercises
I was
a lot.
reading about broken classes, and one of them was you start your wizard off as a fighter, and you make him a shield wizard, like a battle mage, basically. It's level 20 AC wizard.
That's nuts.
What are you going to do?
That's insane. When you're making a character, now there's the draw online to min-max, or even just max-max. You find the most exploitive, destructive type of personality that can just take one little thing, multi-class, and break the game entirely with some crazy spells, combinations of moves, push/launch that can send a guy 600 miles away. Listen, and I'm talking to you. If you're going to do that,
Craig.
Know that Craig. If you do that, you're going to piss a lot of people off.
That's part of, what we were saying about knowing your game. If that's what your game's going to be, cool, go for it. Your DM is expecting it, everybody at the table is expecting it.
If you want to be Superman,
that's fine.
Pick someone up and launch them into the sun, sure.
But
if your characters and everyone else is fine with that. But if you're literally the damage person who just does like 600 damage each turn, people are going to be a little bit like, so why am I here?
Yeah.
Is this your game? Is this,
Yeah.
I mean, no one wants to be like toxic towards a person, but it happens, especially over a long period of time of playing with these people. Someone's going to be a little bit burned out of like, this guy kills everything.
Yeah.
And I swing my sword once. And you gotta be sensitive to that sort of thing. Know your players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, know your table. I mean, because if you're playing with new people, and you've been playing for 10 years, you're gonna max your player, and everybody else is gonna be like, so what can I do? Like, I guess I attack with my sword.
Yeah, exactly. Or those people, and I've played with these people before. They made their first character. They didn't like them. They told the DM to kill their character. They did. It was very lackluster. And then they built the most broken character that they looked up a sheet, like this huge sheet of all the things that they should pick to make the most insane character I've ever seen. Like, he had 2 shields, he had plate armor, he had the highest AC I've ever seen. He took feats and all this stuff, and I'm like, he just was a walking tank, which was fine, but also it was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, is that what your character would really do?
What's the point?
The guy's like, I don't want to get hit once. And you can do that if that's what everyone else is doing, and that's fun for you.
Exactly. If that's what your table's doing, cool, go for it.
And we're not trying to railroad you just like a DM would with a story. If you don't want to do that and you want to have fun with that, try it out. Play around with it a little bit. It can be fun in a one shot.
But if you're at a table, there's 3 other people and they all want story, and you're building a min-max character, it's not going to go over well.
No. When everyone's wanting to understand the nuances of a mystery, and you're walking in there like, I'm Juggernaut. You know what I mean? Like, know the game you're in. Okay, so final thoughts. I think that there's a lot that can be discovered here, and we barely scratched the surface. There's a lot more that we're going to talk about in creating characters, optimizing them to be interesting people, and not just a paper that has your stats, but something that's like, I can resonate with that person. So when your character possibly dies, it can be a tragic moment because it's something you breathe life into. Story, flaws, interesting personality types.
Yeah. You know, this time we talked about really more on the player end. We'll talk about stuff on the DM's end, or GM, depending on what setting you play.
But yeah, stay tuned for further videos. This is the first of many. I've kind of done a little bit in the past, but now we're going to kind of do this more full swing. Well, thank you for watching, and we hope you liked it, and may you join us on the next video. And as we always say, may your rolls always be natural ones.
Just not natural ones.
We'll see you next time. Toodaloo!
Goodbye.